So Mars One is proposing to send humans to Mars in 2032. It's a mission of permanent settlement, a one-way trip, because that's really what makes our mission feasible, possible with existing technology. And we're recruiting worldwide for people who can apply to be on one of the teams to go. We've had one application period. We're doing more in the future. So it's really going to be mankind's mission to Mars. So what we've been looking for is really team skills. Going to Mars is the ultimate team challenge. Of course, we need to train them for engineering skills, for medical skills, for botanical skills to grow food, anything actually that you need here on Earth that you can't do yourself, but hire an expert for, you need to do yourself on Mars because you're the only ones. So we'll train them for all that. But the most important thing we're looking for is the ultimate team players, because that's the biggest challenge of going to Mars. You're living with just 4 people in a relatively small space, about 200 square meters, for 2 years before the second crew is joining you. So that's what we've been looking for. We're trying to get between 10 and 15 teams training full-time, so that in 2031, when we're selecting the first team to go, we'll have between 3 and 5 teams that are actually ready, that have trained long enough, that have proven well enough that they're qualified to go.
You've said that technology is not the issue here, it's the human element, and you've stressed that point, and we'll discuss both of those. But let's talk briefly about the technology.
Yeah, it's not easy. Yeah? There's no such thing as an easy human mission to Mars, but by eliminating the return mission, it becomes possible with existing technology, not existing systems. So applied engineering is required to design everything, but no new inventions, no new materials. So we can do it with the knowledge we have today.
So it is more an ethical consideration, really, more than anything else?
Well, I think the ethical question is not that challenging. I think our responsibility is to be transparent about the risk. So we need to tell people there's all these risks, and there's probably risks we don't know yet. And these are some percentages, some we can't attach percentages to yet because there's too many unknowns. So for example, if we've landed all the hardware on Mars in 8 separate landed missions, we can't give a percentage on the risk of landing yet, because even if all of them succeed, of course, it's not 100%. So there will be risks, and I think it's our job to be transparent about that. And then every person that applies for our mission needs to decide if he thinks that the reward is worth the risk.
Because some would argue it is a suicide mission.
Well, I think that every life is a suicide mission because everybody dies. And it's just what you do with your life between being born and dying, I think, what makes your life worth living. And you might argue that even if you would have just 10 years on Mars, that might be worth more than, might be a greater experience than living 50 years on Earth. But that, as I said, there's no real reason why humans can't have a long and healthy life on Mars.
And you've said it's a plan B, really, because we don't have one currently here on Earth. So what's a day on Mars like, going to be like at least?
Well, a day on Mars is going to be very busy. So they will have a lot of things to do just to maintain their system. So maintenance on the equipment, but also growing food is going to take a very large portion of their time. But of course, the main reason why we're going to Mars is to explore, to find out new things, to answer important questions like where are we from, with more information, because there's rocks on Mars that are older than any rock on Earth. And humans can do that research so much more efficiently than robots that we're currently sending. So the rovers combined have traveled less than 100 kilometers to date. So a human could do that in a couple of days. Sure. So sending humans is just much more efficient for exploration, and that will be what they want to do, but especially the first couple of crews are going to be very busy with surviving, so making sure that they have all the elements in place that they need for survival.
So as I understand it, the first few teams will really have their hands full, and it, in theory, would get easier for teams that follow.
Absolutely, yeah. So especially the team challenge for the first team is going to be mind-boggling. To be locked up on 200 square meters with just 3 other people for 2 years, that's really challenging, especially if it's real, if it's not a simulation here on Earth, but it's on Mars. There's no escape. You have to survive together, whatever happens. And so that's going to be really challenging.
So it's like a Big Brother house on another planet.
Well, I hope that nobody thinks that we're going to make Big Brother on Mars. Now, I compare it more to the Olympic Games. So we're going to select the best of the best people from all over the world, and they're going to do stuff that almost nobody else is able to do.
10 years of training, is that right?
Yeah, a bit more than a decade, correct.
Okay, so that includes the simulation that you mentioned as well.
Yep.
How much faith do you have in that simulation process? Because now we're coming to that human element, and you mentioned how challenging, I guess, it would be to have these people living together with only each other to rely on. Tell me about that process.
Yeah, so we'll build a copy of the Mars outpost here on Earth, and we will lock up the teams that are in training for the mission at least once per year for an undetermined period of time. So when they go in, they don't know if they will be out after 15 minutes or after half a year or even longer, such that they can't count down, because on Mars you're there forever. We can't simulate forever. So that's the best we can do. And in the Earth simulation outpost, we will give them hell. So everything will go wrong. So things that statistically should not happen at the same time, of course they will happen during the simulations. And that way we will test them for how does the team stick together under the most difficult of circumstances. And on the one hand, that's very reliable, and on the other hand, it isn't.
What about the human cost here now for these candidates? Do they say goodbye to their loved ones forever? What kind of communication would they have available to them?
Yeah, I often compare the permanent settlement aspect to going to New York 70 years ago or to Australia 100 years ago. But communication is actually the big difference, because if you go to Mars, you can still communicate. You can send a WhatsApp message, and worst case scenario, 21 minutes later, your family will get it, and another 21 minutes later, you'll get their reply. Best case, it's a 6 minutes return journey for the communication. So you can send video messages or emails. There's a lot of communication possible. Of course, it's also part of our business case, because we make content on Mars. So if someone goes onto the surface to repair a solar array, it's of course going to be live streamed back to Earth to see how they're doing. So communication will be a huge difference compared to the old days of exploration.
What does it take for an engineer to give up a successful business and take what many would regard as a gamble to start a company like this?
That's a good question. It is the proverbial impossible, right? A mission to Mars, and here I am trying it. But I think you should do in life what you like most. And this is my passion, this is my dream. So I want to be part of making the next giant leap for humankind possible. And I believe we can succeed. I think Mars One has a real chance of doing the things that we're proposing to do. But of course, there's also a real chance that we won't make it for whatever reason. But even then, I believe that we've already contributed, because we have put the permanent settlement idea out there. We've not invented it. It was there before, but we have made it a topic of discussion, a topic of debate. And even Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon, he has argued in front of the American Congress that NASA should work on permanent settlement missions. And he invited me for a lunch in London afterwards, and he said, it's thanks to Mars One that I was able to make that argument, or that I felt I was able to make that argument, because he said, I always felt people would say I'm crazy to propose a one-way mission, but if 200,000 people register their interest, then it can't be crazy.
What are your fears, Bas? Are you scared?
No, I'm not scared, because the upside of doing something so complex as a human mission to Mars is that everybody expects you to fail. And I think we've already achieved so much that we have every right to be proud. Considering Mars One, I have no fears. I have fears of being run over by a car when I cross at a red light, but Nothing really in business. There's risks. I mean, in the short term, there's a funding risk. In the medium term, there's a technology risk. In the long term, there's the human risk of finding the right team. But yeah, these are all business risks that everybody deals with in every business.
Would you go?
I started Mars One because I want to go. So the short answer is yes. But the long answer is that I have a family now. They're even here. So I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. Maybe in 30 years, when things are a little bit easier, I'm completely the wrong person, by the way. So I'm impatient, I'm stubborn, I'm easily annoyed. So I would be
you annoy your teammates.
I would be the worst person in the first couple of teams. The permanent settlement issue is not an issue for me at all. I would take my family right away. I do still need to convince my wife.
But Bas, I have to ask you, what are we going to do with the phrase, "what on earth"?
But I think another one is investors often say aim for the moon, and even if you miss, you'll end up among the stars. But I think aim for Mars, then it even rhymes with stars, right?
So you're trying to change our lexicon now?
A little bit, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Bas.
Thank you.